Hello and welcome to How to Sell to Humans. My name is Timothy Bull. I'm a working sales and marketing professional, and this channel is all about looking at those things that really work in sales and marketing today. Maybe not those things that worked 20, 30 years ago, but also looking at those things that remain universal. So on today's on this video, and this is going to be an in-depth one, so it's going to be mainly audio. So feel free to put this on a side tab if you're looking at some other things online. So this is a kind of in-depth, and I really want to talk about why it is I do what I do. And there's a lot of sort of things that I sort of focus upon here. First and foremost, I've been working as a sales and marketing professional for over 10 years now. And I've worked on behalf of some really, a big mixture of different customers, everyone from Tesco to Skanska to Dow Jones, huge range of different organisations. I've also worked in-house for one of the world's leading technology research companies. Great place to work. They taught me a heck of a lot about how to sell. I might talk about that a bit more. But I think all through my life I've kind of always, without necessarily realising it, always been a salesman. And kind of growing up, I remember as a kid and sort of as a teenager and as a sort of guy in my 20s, going to a very active church. I'm a Christian by faith. I don't talk too much about that on this channel, but I might do later. And I remember my father had always been very kind of influential, being a church warden, being a sort of the treasurer, sort of taking care of money and that kind of stuff. And I remember my father sort of complaining to me, jokingly, that everyone had started to refer to him as my father rather than me as his son. Oh, you're Tim's dad, kind of thing. So, looking at that, I've always been a big believer in the power of communication and also the importance of business. I'm the son of a businessman and a teacher, so I've kind of really grown up with saying, okay, and I think I've kind of inherited, I guess, both nature and nurture from both those kind of disciplines. Personally, I love helping and I love mentoring people and really guiding them, building them up. I've been a mentor at previous roles, and I think this is a big part of why I do what I do with this channel. So it's very much about really kind of being there in the moment and helping people. Like, how can I help them improve what they're doing? I mean, for me personally, I've signed some big sort of six-figure deals. I'm always looking to improve my own practices. This is feeling a bit of like a confessional. This I haven't sort of thought this. I haven't fully thought this format through yet, but. And in future on these kind of in-depths, I'm looking to do interviews with other people. But this for me is a kind of a bit of, you can sort of hear a bit about what I'm about. So so where was I? So kind of growing up, I've always kind of had a bit of that flair. I've sort of experimented with different kind of entrepreneurial pursuits. But I think kind of growing up as well, I kind of had, I mean, when I was a sort of teenager and a younger guy in my 20s, a lot of that time my father was doing the sort of corporate job. So 9 to 5, work for a big company, don't ask questions. And so I think kind of growing up, I had a lot of that sort of built in. Don't question, just be a drone, just do those kind of standard things. So I went through a lot of that, and I also had times in my career where just after I'd started, I come back from Sweden after doing my masters over there. I was working for a communications agency in just sort of outside of London, and the Great Recession of sort of 2008, 2009 hit. That company kind of mostly collapsed. They let most of the people go. And so I kind of went through a time of just like, real kind of examination. And over the sort of couple of years after that, I sort of did a couple of different things. I went to work for on a major project with a really nice financial service company. They really built up my confidence. Really nice company. I mean, one of my big beliefs is that to a certain degree, capital. If you can make the right arguments and get in touch with the right people, you can raise capital. But really good, skilled people, they're really worth their weight in gold. So anyway, where was I? Yeah, so went from there, working with this financial services company, to go and work for a communications agency. So when I was there, we worked with some really exciting big customers, both big companies but also high net worth individuals. Taught me a heck of a lot about my own confidence and kind of going out there and pitching and really reaching out to people. Then I worked for a charitable organisation for a little bit, but then I kind of ended up going back into the corporate world for a couple of years, working for this big tech research company. And what I would say is that company, I had access to some of the best sales trainers in the world, some of the best knowledge, some of the best experience. But having that training and that experience, that's only really part of what you need. Having other people's experience, you also need to kind of step up and do things. And I still remember to this day. I think it was doing one of my first cold calls. Here's a list of people. Here's a list of people to call. And I still remember making one of those first calls and being absolutely terrified. I remember my manager at the time, a really nice guy. He just sort of he helped me. He supported me, kind of got me through it. I think I still remember the guy I ended up talking to. He was a nice guy, but he was never going to buy. And it was during that time when I was at that company, my first kind of full quarter on floor. I ended up being, I think, the number one account executive above plan for the whole company for that quarter, which I was really pleased about, because I managed to land in a big deal. It was also during that time that I signed a whole load of new clients, one of whom was a really exciting Swedish tech company called Antura. And I got working with Antura very closely, understanding what it is they wanted to achieve. I signed them as my client and kind of got a great sense of who they were, and I still remember to this day going along to a big event where Antura was hosting in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, and they had hundreds of people in attendance, including loads of their really happy customers. And one of the customers there was a bank in the Nordic region. I won't mention the name here, but and this particular bank had only been a customer of Antura's, I think for like something like less than 6 months. Yet they were already so happy with what they'd seen that they were basically willing to step up and say this in front of hundreds of people. Now, by this point, I'd already worked with a whole load of different software clients, and I'd heard almost nothing like this before. So I sat there thinking, okay, this is something really special. So sort of about a year and a half later, I was looking to move on, do something fresh. So I approached the management team and board of Antura, and in all this time I'd gotten to know them well. They got to trust me. They'd kind of understood that I could sell because I'd sold to the CEO and the board. And I basically said to them, so I understand you're looking to break into the UK. Well, how about we set up a UK office and I head it up for you? And so I put together a proper business proposal, talked them through kind of how I was going to approach, what I was going to do, and they said yes. And we've since been doing this now a couple of years in the UK, and we're now kind of in the third year. So we've won a number of pieces of business, including part of one of the largest construction companies in the world, and part of the Department of Health here in the UK. And some other ones I can't mention at the moment, but very, very exciting ones. And it's looking like in year 3 that we're looking at some really huge breakthroughs. So it's extremely exciting times. And I'm sort of sitting thinking like, okay, well, what can I do next? how can I keep building this business? So we're doing all the sort of standard things. So going to exhibited events, and really making a kind of big push of how we kind of go out there and present ourselves. And in many ways, we're kind of in the UK. We're a bit of an underdog because not everyone knows us yet, and that's on me. So one of the big things I'm looking to do with Entura now is to kind of really continue building up our what's the word? Our reputation here in the UK. And then as we continue to grow that, I want to really tap into kind of having really happy customers speaking on our behalf. We were really fortunate to have the big construction company Skanska UK speaking on our behalf at this huge event in just a few weeks ago as time of recording, so earlier in March 2018. And so it's building those kind of things up. It's I feel like I'm selling something I really believe in. I wouldn't say what we sell is perfect, because I think when you start thinking what you sell is perfect, that's when you stop innovating. That's when you stop listening to your customers. That's when you just say, right, it's all done, let's just leave it. And the nature of the market is that these things are always changing, they're always shifting. So we've kind of got a lot of really exciting big names talking to us at the moment. And if I were to say some of them to you, your head would spin. But I think a lot of this has come from kind of having a mindset of just saying, okay, well, what can I do that's different? How can we stand out from the competition? And in my particular market, there's a few sort of major brands we're competing against, but a lot of their tools, I keep hearing from people who have to use them, a lot of their tools are so hard to use, they're really user unfriendly. We had one bank kind of sharing with us about how one particular other piece of software works. So the sort of software we sell is project portfolio resource management, basically helping people to kind of helping a lot of people to sell, not to sell, helping a lot of people to select and deliver their projects on time and on budget. So the selection pieces, do you have the budget for it? Do you have the capacity to run it? That kind of thing. And then the sort of delivery, tracking all those details through and making sure it kind of hits those targets. So there's a lot of things kind of going on here. We're always listening to the market and sort of saying, okay, well, what can we do to improve? And I really like that because I think it's really honest. I also think, from everything I've read from when I was at the B2B Sales and Marketing Expo a couple of weeks ago, a lot of things there about how the nature of sales itself is changing, where once it was a purely relationship between, say, the buyer and the seller. Now the person buying has got access to a whole network of people who are sharing information, talking about how this has helped them. And what I can say is I've had a lot of leads come through from people where we basically found out about us from someone putting something on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that, talking about how great the software is. So a lot of things are shifting and changing. Now, because those things are shifting and changing, does that mean that you don't need salespeople anymore? Absolutely not. You always need salespeople. But the very nature of kind of how people buy has changed. But I would say a lot of the cool things remain. There's a great book, To Sell is Human, by Daniel Pink. And Daniel Pink, he talks a lot about how the kind of balance of information has changed. He uses an example of where these sort of the slimy used car salesman kind of stereotype came from. And his argument is essentially, and I think it's a valid one, that back in the day, when you were buying a car, before the internet, before all these sort of things, before smartphones, all these what have yous, you were extremely reliant on the person selling the used car to you. Now, the expression of a really rubbish car is a lemon. So if you were going to buy a lemon, well, you wouldn't know if you're going to buy a lemon or not. That was entirely up to the used car salesman. He could very well do, talk about, okay, well, this car is amazing, this is fantastic, this covers everything you need, but he was going to sell you an absolute piece of junk. Nowadays, not only can you do a lot of your research online, and I was reading some details that before someone's even talking to a salesperson, they've usually gone on the website, downloaded loads of information, checked out what other customers have said, watched your video content, all that kind of stuff. So nowadays, by the point even someone gets to a decision, gets in front of a salesperson, they've often done a lot of the research themselves. There's no longer someone coming into the meeting with a used car salesman or whoever absolutely cold. That's gone. Likewise, a big part of that network is a lot of people are sharing and talking together. So they'll feedback and say, actually, I like this person, I don't like this person, I trust this person. So a lot of people are kind of sharing a lot of these details. So they're saying, okay, well, what's actually going on here? Now, I've had an interesting example of this recently where I've been participating in a lot of networking events in my industry here in the UK. Really nice organisation. They're really forward-thinking. I won't mention the organisation by name, but I've just realised a really good way for Antura to make ourselves known. We don't yet have a multi-million pound marketing budget here in the UK, so I can't just flood Google with loads of ads. I have to think about different approaches. So one of the things I've been doing is by building up a really good network of contacts, people to kind of really talk things through, and this networking group is part of it. So, cut long story short, I was at an event where one of my competitors has also decided to attend. Nice guy, I don't think anything bad about him, but the attitude people sort of said to me, and people really didn't like talking to him. They felt he didn't listen. They felt he was constantly pitching at people, and he had no interest in what they actually needed. Now, I'm a strong believer in pitching what you have to sell, but it has to be done in a way that you're actually listening to what is it the person you're talking to needs. If you go on this old school approach, nowadays you're dead. No one cares. No one really cares about your pitch. What people really care about is how can we help them? How can we help them sleep at night? How can we help them achieve what they need to do? So with a lot of these kind of things going on, you're looking at these sort of situations and saying, okay, so what is it that what is it we can do here? How can we help someone? And I know we've won business away from some of these major competitors by asking those questions, by actually sitting there and listening and sort of saying, okay, so what is it you guys need? And I'm a big believer in that. I think the old approach to sales, the old blam 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 approach, I think it's dead. I still believe there are strengths to things like cold calling. I think that still has its place. Though I think with GDPR coming in here in the UK and the rest of Europe, rest of the EU, that's going to be an increasingly big question. How cold calling will be affected by GDPR. But also social selling is on the rise too, and a lot of this links back into your reputation. And I'm going to do a lot more talking about that kind of thing as well. So I've sort of talked a bit about where I kind of come from and a bit on my own background. Looking to the future on this channel, I'm looking at doing other bits and pieces, including looking at how some people sell, and also looking at, well, what is it certain people say. I'm a big follower of people like Grant Cardone, one of the best sales trainers in the world. He says he's the best salesman in the world. I would. I like his confidence. He's a really smart guy, and he's really walked the walk. He's not perfect, and I don't think he'd ever claim to be, but he's actually done a load of this stuff. Don't listen to so-called sales experts who've never sold anything. And Cardone has sold a heck of a lot. So that's one of the guys I listen to a lot. Another really interesting guy who I met at another event in London a couple of years ago, called Daniel Priestley. Really, really nice, really smart guy. Australian businessman. Got a business that operates here in the UK, kind of called Indepth. And Indepth kind of helps a lot of people make a dent in the universe. So it helps them with, really making clear what it is they have to offer, and kind of where they're going on with things. And I remember a story he told about one personal trainer he'd worked with, who had gone from having, being a boring, and for any personal trainers listening, please forgive me, but kind of a boring pitch, essentially saying he was a professional trainer, he charges this much an hour, he works in London. Not very exciting. So Daniel Priestley, by working with him, actually focused him and sort of said, okay, so what does he do really well? So when it came down to it, Daniel Priestley then sort of said, okay, so working with this guy, they formulated this completely new pitch. And the new pitch essentially was that this personal trainer helps stressed out, time poor male executives in their 40s and 50s get into the best shape of their lives. All of a sudden, by changing his pitch, by changing his approach, that particular personal trainer, as I understand it, has gone from £20 an hour to suddenly having multiple clients who are paying him 5 figures a year. So all of a sudden he's completely changed his mindset from just a few bits and pieces a year, a few bits and pieces a month, regular kind of stuff. All of a sudden, flipping up, becoming what Daniel Priestley calls a key person of influence, or a KPI. So a lot of really interesting ideas there, and I kind of sit and think to myself, okay, so what is it I can do? And Daniel Priestley talks a lot about becoming a key person of influence in your industry. So I'm definitely looking at, well, how can I become a key person of influence in, say, the UK, the global sales industry, the global marketing industry? How can I improve myself and step up and come into that? And I've got some ideas. I mean, I've got a good friend I'm working with, who I've helped kind of in my spare time, who is running a big photography organisation, a growing photography organisation. And his whole general pitch, and he and I worked on his pitch, is basically you take kind of, when people sell something online, there's always this sort of like, how does it match up between the image and what's actually sold? So his business, called Sculptor with Light, is all about helping vendors, or actually other organisations now as well. He's working with museums and all kinds of other places to help them with photography and taking records of their important documents in such a way that it looks just as you would see it on the, just as you would kind of see it online, in the real world. Sorry. So he and I are working on an interesting side project at weekends, potentially around helping creative people to pitch and sell. So this is kind of something I'm also working on. But I'm really looking for this channel to be a place for discussion, to really kind of create a lot of feedback, a lot of interest, and to become a real community. Because that's what How to Sell to Humans is all about. It's about selling, both sales and marketing, and it's also about being human. So having a sense of humour, recognizing what works, being pragmatic, all those kind of good and positive things. I think that's covered a lot in today's Indepth. I'm probably going to start doing these sort of in-depth, mainly audio pieces, sort of once every kind of couple of weeks. This was kind of a bit of a ramble, but I want to do longer pieces that are more focused on kind of maybe a particular topic. I'm also still going to do the shorter videos with me in the jacket and hat, and also probably going to do sort of short 1-minute bursts as well, sort of on one particular thing, whether it be, always check your time when you're doing your intros to calls, or other kind of things to just be aware of. Take notes as another thing. because even the what's it they say? Even the bluntest of pencils can capture more than the sharpest of minds. So lots of good things working on there. Anyway, really appreciate you listening to this. Really welcome your feedback below. Great speaking with you all. And until next time, happy selling. Take care. Bye-bye.